Welcome to Divine Downloads. I'm your host and spiritual mentor, Cassandra, and this is the show where we help you divinely design your life. Today's episode is continuing our special little program, I don't know what you want to call it, where I invite you to meet some of my nearest, dearest, longest clients that I've worked with on and off. And Lauren, who is our special guest today, I've worked with on and off for over a decade. And one of the things that I'm so excited for us to talk about today and for you to hear about is the journey of pivoting as we spiritually evolve and what that often looks like for our life, for our business, and how we can approach each new death and rebirth and pivot in our life with grace, with leaning into our intuition. I have worked with Lauren over the years from her beginning as a holistic health coach, launching a food prep line when she was in New York City, through her consulting as a shaman for businesses when she was in LA, through her really owning her incredible mediumship gifts. She is a Karuna Reiki healer. She's a powerful, powerful healer. She is a powerful sound bath performer, healer, right? Lauren is one of those gems of a soul that just has so many gifts and has become proficient in so many different modalities that I think she's a great person for you to learn from, as far as if you're somewhere on your path, on your spiritual journey, and maybe you're in one of those inflection points and you're feeling like, I feel a call. And maybe that call is to move across country. Maybe that call is to change your offerings. Maybe that call is to completely shift modalities. You're in the right place. This is the podcast for you, because we're going to go through Lauren's journey, but also we're going to talk about how we can navigate these different pivotal moments with ease and grace and power, and keep coming back to our intuitive wisdom. So without further ado, I can't wait you to meet Lauren Unger.
Lauren, it is such a delight to have you on Divine Downloads. I feel like I've had just such the immense pleasure of being your coach and walking with you and knowing you through so many of your evolutions. And I think one of the things that both of us have been passionate about over the years is not just like whatever stage our current business is currently in, but also this like overarching theme of how like we evolve and pivot and transform with our soul's journey, with our learning, and that therefore always affects, what we're teaching or what we're passionate about or what we're creating in the world. So welcome to the podcast. I'm like, what do we think? Lauren is also, I feel like, just incredibly magical and intuitive. So I'm going to give her so much more driving space, I think, than I usually do on this show. But do you want to share with people where you're at right now? Or do you feel like it would serve more to just kind of start from the beginning, from like when we met, and take them through like a brief overview of the different iterations?
Maybe we start at the beginning, because what's actually so interesting is, and first of all, thank you for having me on, because it is so full circle, because I am in so many ways where I began, except a totally new version of who I am, and the most real and authentic version of me, which is, not who you met, gosh, like almost a decade ago.
A decade ago in New York City. And I think so many, I will let Lauren take you through her evolutions, but I think so many of you guys are going to relate to Lauren's story and find a place where it connects to maybe where you're at right now, because, she went through, similarly to me. And I think a lot of people, like, our kind of gateway entry into the spiritual world ends up being the wellness world. And food or cooking or, well-being in whatever way it kind of floats for, that person, right? And then kind of evolves through these different stages as their own journey goes. And so I'm excited for you guys to listen up, hear Lauren's story, because I think she has a lot of wisdom, and as someone that's been with her on it, she has a lot of grace that I think is one of the hardest things sometimes when we're moving through different pivots. And we're moving through like death rebirth cycles, right? And we're like, damn it, I thought this was it. No, it's a new thing, right? And I think one of the beautiful strengths about Lauren is that her resistance is pretty low to that. So she's able to just like honor what is coming up and move through it. And it's totally normal, just in case you're like, I'm in intense resistance right now, someone listening. That's so normal to be in resistance when you're like,
I used to be in that major resistance. There was a time.
So let's start from the beginning. You can start it from when we met about like a decade ago, or even earlier if you want.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably just start it there. When we met, I did the whole corporate America thing. I was out of corporate America by that time, I think I was still working in recovery. I was working as a private chef in recovery, or maybe I had just started my own meal delivery business, but I was in the food world. No, I must have been working in recovery because I met you at Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah.
So I was working as a private chef with clients recovering from food, drug, and alcohol addiction. And through an ex-boyfriend getting arrested in my home, I turned to God for the first time. I didn't even know I was turning to God. I was just crying on my bathroom floor and heard, go to Kundalini Yoga. And I was like, oh, I've heard of that. Someone mentioned it once to me. So I went, like that day I went. And I remember thinking in my first class, is this a cult? I think I want to join it, but I know I can leave at any time. So I kept going, like, and as they say in Kundalini, like keep coming back. And I think they say that in AA too, right? Like
Yeah.
keep coming back. It works if you work it. And it's true with anything, with any healing journey. And I think it was like a workshop where I met your girlfriend who was a chef, and had just come out with her book, the Italian Nona. I don't know what the actual book is called. And she's like, I think you need to talk to my friend Cass. And we started talking. You had just come back from being on a show I didn't even know about. And anyway, I was like, okay, yes, I'm supposed to know this person. I don't know why. I don't know what this connection is. And we ended up meeting up, I don't know, a week or two later in Stuyvesant town, sitting under a tree. And you showed me A Course in Miracles. And I went and bought it like that day. It took me a few years to actually pick it up and then read it. But it was this moment where I was like, wow, this is so different than anyone I've ever met before. This is really different than my current friends. Like, I don't feel like anyone understands me right now because I'm going through stuff. And at the time, I didn't even know it was a spiritual awakening. I was just like, oh, my boyfriend got arrested in my home and my life. And right, I was still in that resistance and woe is me. And that was really the beginning of my journey. It was at Kundalini Yoga and being in the kitchen and trying to figure out what is happening. And then about a year or 2 years later, my first love passed away. And the day he died, he began communicating with me. And at the time, I had obviously no idea I was a medium. I didn't even know I was going through a spiritual awakening. But I decided to lean into that because it didn't make sense to me. At the time I was 32, he was 35. How could someone just die and not be here anymore? I didn't understand it. So when I felt him communicating, I was like, okay, this is cool. Let's figure out what this is all about. And it's only recently, actually, through Kundalini Yoga, I realized I didn't fully grieve his death because I decided to hop on the unicorn and go for the fucking ride that it took me on instead. So shortly after Jeff's death, I loved what I was doing. I had started a meal delivery service in New York City. I was about to expand a snack line of raw vegan. They were called Amaze Balls, and they were Amaze Balls. People still love them. And I got this intuitive hit that my life was going to change. And I ended up moving out to LA within 6 months. I fully left the kitchen. I was no longer cooking. And my third day living in LA, I found what is called Holy Fire Reiki. I'd already gotten trained in Reiki levels 1 and 2 in the traditional Asui that December before I moved. And then when I walked into this room for Holy Fire Reiki, I just remember thinking, what is this? I need this. This is not the same as the Reiki I know. This is why I'm here. And I did my master's in Holy Fire Reiki a month later. And as soon as I did it, it was like, boom, like my mind blew wide open. I totally understood I was a medium. I was getting these downloads that I had been a shaman in past lives, that I was deeply a healer, and all of these things that I kind of knew that had been unraveling since my corporate America days. Because the reason I left corporate America was I had this inner knowing that I was here to help people heal, and went back to school to be a health coach and ultimately became a chef, to take it a little out of order and back. So I found myself living in LA with absolutely no friends. At least you were there. I knew you. And I found myself on this wild journey, and I ended up working as a spiritual advisor in the cannabis industry. So, totally transparent. I was smoking a large amount of weed, very great sun grown cannabis that at the time was really helping me make peace with what was happening in my life. It really helped me just say, like, okay, this is all very real. And I remember calling my mom one night and asking her, "Hey, I made a family tree in like 6th grade. I think it's in the basement. Can you find it and send me a picture of it? It's like on a poster board." And she found it and sent me pictures. And that was when my like healing journey really started, because I would sit in my apartment at night and I would light a spirit stick, as I eventually called them. And I started giving Reiki to my ancestors who had crossed over. I would just simply give them Reiki. I would tune in with them and ask them what they needed and how I could support. And some of them would talk back, some of them wouldn't. And I would simply just hold the space for love, and to give them that love, because we're healing the 7 generations before us and the ones to come. So I guess that's where unconsciously I was called to go. So I would, by day, I was a spiritual advisor in the cannabis industry, and by night, I was healing my ancestors. And slowly but surely, I started coming out of the spiritual closet on Instagram. I used to do like live readings, smoking joints before your lives would save. And it was a whole journey in time. And eventually I was in LA for a little over a year, and I had this inner knowing that I was done, that I was complete. And I didn't know what that meant, because I really thought, like, this is it. Like, this is a great life. But I could see how it was a pattern, and I wanted to not get stuck in a loop for another year. And God brought me to Miami, which is where I'm based now, and my whole life really changed as I got to Miami, where again, I had no friends. I didn't know anyone. And within 6 months of moving here, I actually got sober, which was something I never imagined doing, especially coming from being an advisor in the cannabis industry. And that became this whole other path and journey that I talked a lot about for the better part of 5 years while I was sober from alcohol and cannabis. I am no longer sober. I'm simply in a place where my nervous system is regulated and I don't need substances. And if I choose to have substances, I also have a deep level of awareness. So I moved to Miami. That I moved in March, and that 420, instead of like being at some cool 420 party, I was actually at a sound healing training. I spent the weekend learning sound healing, and from there I started creating courses and creating content. First and foremost for myself. I didn't even know they were courses or content. I just knew I was healing me. And eventually I was guided to start sharing this stuff. So that's really how my business began. And for the better part of the last 6 years, that was my focus, was working with clients, helping them through their own awakenings. A lot of clients came to me who were dealing with death as well and not understanding the death process, or simply were going through awakenings and all sorts of things. I always noticed whatever I had healed 6 months ago, someone would come to me for 6 months later. And I know we've talked about this a lot before. So it's been this constant evolution. And I'm actually in such an evolution right now because I started a Kundalini yoga teacher training in January. And prior to that training and making my final payment on New Year's Eve, I was in the shower and I heard very clearly, your life is going to change. The friends in your life, many of them will not be in your life at this time next year. And a lot of things are going to change. You'll likely be moving. I believe I'll stay in Miami. We'll see. I'm still in training, so we'll see what happens. And I made peace with that. I made peace with the fact that I could see how if I didn't do the training, I could end up going in a circle again. And I didn't want that. 2 years ago, I lost my grandmother who was here in Florida. And then last year, I lost my great aunt. And I had spent the last 5 years so close to them that when they both passed away, they gave me very clear guidance on the things I needed to focus on. My grandmother was very clear. I needed to work on bringing food back into my life and cooking. And I started writing my healing cookbook that eventually will be finished when it's done healing me. And my great aunt came through very strongly in terms of partnership and the relationship that I'm calling in. So the last 2 years have shifted my business a lot, that I see a lot less clients than I used to see. I'm very mindful and selective about who gets to share space and energy with me, whether it be friends or clients, and at times family as well. And now I'm in this beautiful place 5 months into my training where I see the relationships that God was showing me on New Year's Eve. I see how they no longer serve me and also how they did serve me to get to this point. And there's so much love and gratitude for all of it. So I'm in this beautiful place where I'm continuing to let go and let God and trusting. I may not have a clear picture of what's on the other side, and I have a lot of clear knowings and a lot of clear feelings. So I lean into the feelings and into the knowings. And I also have a knowing that my clear vision is coming through more and more.
I love it. Okay, there's so much I want to unpack. That's why I was like, if you saw my attention go, I was like trying to take notes. I was like, I'm scared with my pregnancy brain that I'm going to forget things. But so there's a few things. First of all, Lauren is very humble. At each part of that story, you know, Lauren had a lot of success in these different ventures, right? And it was, you know, I remember it wasn't this like when the meal prep company that she had, right? It was like all of a sudden, like she was getting more and more like demands, more offices were like, you know, wanting her to meal prep for them. And then her Amazeballs things was just starting to take off. Everybody was a fan. And and then vice versa, like also like her spiritual business also was, you know, has done incredibly well. Her, you know, I mean, she literally was like a professional shaman, which was just like so impressive that like, it's like, this is going to be actually a career position. I'm going to get a company to hire me to do this. Traveled internationally with that job as well, I remember. And so I highlight this because I often think, and I want to talk about both sides of this, right? Because I feel like when people sometimes hear stories like that, a question that could come up in their mind was like, oh, well, did she just keep pivoting because it like wasn't hitting? And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with pivoting, and we can talk about like when something's not hitting, why that sometimes is a sign to pivot because it's not in alignment, right? But you've also pivoted when it was hitting, not pivoting.
Yeah. Even right now, I feel like I'm going to pivot when everything is hitting and it's like, but I'm so much more than this one thing. And that's what I've always felt. Like I'm so much more than this one thing. I didn't understand it back then. Like every time I had to leave something, because that's how it felt at the time. Like, oh, why do I have to leave this? Like, I love this, and I have to let go of it. Why? And there was some kicking and screaming along the way, especially at the beginning, and it's gotten easier because I also see now how it's all connected and why I needed to do all of the leaving and to come back to it, because I believe we walk through the door, like we have to come back through the doors in which we once came to come back home to ourselves. So it's like now I'm re-walking through the doors as a whole new person. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get why that had to happen that way.
Yeah. And when you were in those moments, for someone that's listening that maybe is like in one of those moments right now and is like, okay, maybe it's going great, maybe it's going good. Maybe it's like, okay, it's just chugging along, right? Or maybe they're like on top of the world and they're like, wow, is this really taking off? And fuck, I feel like I need to pivot. Or I feel like it's not aligned. What's the advice you would give to someone in that moment? Or, maybe now that you've kind of had so much time to reflect and you've been through all these iterations, I know for me in my journey, one of the things I like always do, and I feel like you probably do this as well, is like I just look for the breadcrumbs, right? And so kind of like what you were saying, it's like the first big move is always like the hardest big move because you're kind of going at it blind, but then like success leaves clues.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of like go back. So can you fill in the audience on like what were your little clues and things that maybe you would like offer up to someone moving through a pivot or a death rebirth?
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing, and I didn't even understand at the time, is really listening and trusting your intuition and taking the action and understanding ego and intuition are different. Ego is loud and like barks orders at you. Intuition is really soft and gentle and wants to hold your hand through the process. And the thing is, when we don't listen to our intuition, it gets quieter. So I remember when I was in corporate America, and I talk about this a lot. And when I finally left, I had been hearing, feeling, knowing this inner knowing, I'm here to help people heal. And I had no idea what that meant. I worked at a talent agency. I worked for professional athletes. Like I loved my career. Like I had the coolest career in the corporate world. So I was like, what does that even mean? I'm here to help people heal. Like I do events and marketing and all this other cool stuff. Like I don't how does it translate? But I kept hearing that and listened. And the first step it led me to do was I started making lunches for myself. And then my coworkers started asking me to make lunch for them too, because they were like, your salads look better than the salads like downstairs at Cafe Gigi. Can you make our salads instead? So I started making salads, and the next thing I knew, I started a blog that was like a blog spot blog back in the, like a good old blog spot. It's still there, like a hint of greens.blogspot.com. And sometimes I'll visit it just to remember how long I've been on this freaking path. Um, but I wasn't fully listening. Like I was taking steps. Like God was showing me, the universe was showing me, whatever you want to call it, like you need to leave your career. Like you need to fully leap. And I lived in Manhattan. I had rent to pay. Like there was no I'm just going to leave. Like that seemed terrifying then. And then what happened? I broke my foot. Someone stepped on my foot. I broke my foot, and it was the foot out of the door from corporate America. I had to take a leave of absence. And during that leave of absence, I enrolled in school to be a holistic health coach at Integrative Nutrition. And at the same time as my foot was healing, my company absolved my position, gave me unemployment. So I was unemployed and in school. And then someone I knew posted on Facebook that they were leaving a nanny job and needed someone to recommend. She recommended me, and I got a part-time job being a nanny. So I got unemployment. I was nannying. So like cash under the table. It was a very long time ago. IRS, like, don't worry about that cash I got. And And I took that leap. But like, right, that first leap was a very forceful one, and it was very uncomfortable, and it was very unknown as to what was going to happen. And then slowly things continued to evolve and shift. And I had a friend who was dating someone. They were both in recovery, and they had friends that had opened a high-end recovery home in New York City and needed a chef. And I was like, well, I'm not a chef. Like, I just cook for myself. And they said, like, go interview. And I went and I interviewed, and they said, we'll take a chance on you if you take a chance on us. So I said, okay, let's do it. And I ended up doing that for 2 years. And right, like, it was just me listening. I'm here to help people heal. And I didn't even understand it quite yet that I was helping people heal simply by feeding them, because I didn't understand that. I didn't understand energy. I didn't understand the healing of my hands, and that by cooking and using my hands, I was creating this. And by mantra, like, now I understand mantra and infusing all of these other things into the food, but I was healing people. And in turn, I was also healing myself through cooking. And in nannying, I was healing my inner child. So I had all these different components going on. And all of a sudden, it was like, okay, like, what's next? And that's when, eventually Jeff passed away. And prior to his passing, for about a year, I felt this inner knowing to move to LA, but I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to take that leap. I had built this successful business. Why would I leave? That makes no sense. I only have one friend in LA, and like, I don't really like to hang out with her that much. So like, why am I going to do this? And then Jeff died, and it was so clear, like, you need to go to LA, and like, this is the last time we're going to tell you. And I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to listen to this nudge. And eventually my intuition started getting louder. And instead of ignoring it, at first it was like, okay, tell me 3 times and then I'll listen. And now it's like, all right, tell me once. If I miss it the first time, tell me again. I won't miss it on number 2. So I think that's like my biggest thing is trust your intuition, even if it makes absolutely no sense. It made no sense why I would leave a successful career that I had built in New York to move to LA, where I knew no one and had not a single job opportunity lined up. I just thought I was going to go there and be a cannabis chef. Like, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, I'm going to like be a chef that like cooks with cannabis. And immediately God was like, no, that's not what you're going to do, but you're here for something else. Can you trust me? Can you trust yourself? Right? Because it's can I trust myself? Can I trust my intuition? Can I trust my highest good? So, when we listen to our intuition, we simply strengthening it over and over and over again.
Absolutely. And I think what I love about that journey too is I think sometimes in the glamorization of manifesting and life advancement or whatever you want to call it, we forget some of those like nuances of the fact of being like, you took a nanny job, right? And it's like, if, by certain people's kind of viewpoints, you might think like, oh no, she has to go straight from corporate America to her dream job, right? And it's like, no, something can be aligned with you in a season, in a moment, and supportive, and deeply healing in its own magical way that is not super obvious to us sometimes, right? That, that if we're only thinking on that, like you were saying, kind of like an egoic level, we miss the boat because we're like, no, I'm a holdout. I'm a holdout and so I think, I like to point that out because that's one of the things that, I definitely, I'm always advocating for with my clients as well, is that like, there are so many things we don't know what everything is for usually, but if we like follow that intuitive nudge, and when we're making these pivots, especially depending on where we're at in our journey, there can be aligned things that come in that maybe aren't and I guess this is someone that like started off as an actress that's like was kind of ingrained in me for a while, that like sometimes the best thing you can do for your like ultimate alignment and ultimate dream, whatever, is find something that can like support your like financial situation and help you be comfortable in this season while you're like giving yourself the space to be in alignment and let whatever the new thing is unfold. Right. And so I love that you did that with that nanny job, and then even like led that into this, you know, being in this space of being open, and something that I talk about in Divinely Design Your Life. I feel like I'm sure we've talked about, but you kind of do it intuitively. Where it's like we sometimes just have an essence of a desire, right? Where you're just like, I know I'm here to heal people. I'm here to help people, right? And I think it's beautiful that like your essence, I think, was clear to you before you, because of where you were in your spiritual journey, where your divine like desire essence came in, or purpose essence, whatever you want to call it, like you didn't have at that time. And this is like back in the day, or whatever, when we had like our blogs, right? I say time and time again, I feel like you'll probably agree with me, that it was such a gift that it was not, we didn't know this path was possible for us in a way, because it wasn't like
No
shown.
idea. No idea. Like no one was talking about this on Instagram. Instagram didn't even have videos yet. It was like click a
Just
photo and like put a lo-fi on it.
no one was trying to do anything on Instagram yet. No, like being like I mean, I'm sure life coaches existed, but it wasn't like in the, you know, our like zeitgeist the way it is right now, or it's like such a thing. And so it's like in a way of like going in blinded. And now I feel like the challenge is, and I don't know if you resonate with this, but I feel like now what I actively try to do sometimes is like put my blindfolds on, right? And say, okay, well, if I like, let me stop looking at the examples that are out there and like go into like the dark box or whatever
Yeah.
of nothingness and think, okay, in nothingness, what do I want to create? But I think that's, you know, for anyone that's listening, I think what Lauren said, it's the things I want to point out is get back to that essence of like, what do you feel called towards? Because when our soul speaks, when we're listening to our intuition, it's rarely like that, like hyper specificity of like, you are going to do like, you're going to be this position in this company, or you're going to have this. It's usually something like that. Like you're going to heal people, you're going to help people, right? It's this like statement that is like a guiding kind of principle that you kind of let unfold, and unfolds in a lot of different ways along your journey. So as you're going through this, get to that point, you have this scare, get like a little bit of like a, you know, what do they call it? Like Deus ex machina in like the old Greek plays, where like it's like it would be like when like the god comes in and just intervenes. It's like, and now this happens, right? Like I feel like that happened with your foot, and they were like, okay, now this happens, but now you're being challenged to have your own moment with LA and make that move in your conscious choice, and not necessarily have someone like force you out of your apartment and force you into an apartment in LA or whatever it may be. What do you think, looking back, was like the main fears you had to conquer, and how do you think you ultimately made that leap?
You know, I think that the fear that drove me to not leave for the year that I knew like you should go to LA was, but all my friends are here, my family's here, my life is here, my apartment's here, my job is here. All of the very normal human things. When Jeff died though, I said to my sister, actually the last time I was in New York visiting, that I never noticed pink clouds until Jeff died. But like pink clouds didn't just start showing up 8 years ago. I wasn't awake. I wasn't alive. So when he died, I actually woke up to a whole new reality that I never even knew existed. So for me at that point, it was like, I kind of don't give a fuck. My first love and best friend just died. I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. And I held on to my apartment in New York because I owned it. So I had a little bit of like safety and knowing like I could always go back home if this isn't right. But at the same time, I signed a year lease and was like, I'm going to take this leap because a few months after he passed, friends that were out in California, Northern California, invited me to spend some time. And I ended up spending a month there and hanging out and cooking and working as a chef a little bit. And then I got hired to do a dinner in LA for 50 people, the biggest dinner I had ever done at that time for a cannabis company. And I'll never forget this dinner because we couldn't get into the Airbnb until about 5 hours before the dinner to cook for 50 people. I only had one assistant and there were some like help doing the table and the staff on that side, but I only had one person in the kitchen with me. And the dinner was epic. It was amazing. It went off perfectly in 5 hours. I still have no idea how I did it. But I remember driving back to Santa Monica from Hollywood that night. The road was totally clear. And I was like, this is it. I'm moving here. I don't know why, but I know I'm meant to be here. I know you're here. I know this is it. So like let's just do it. And like for many of us it's going to be a big thing that takes us to really move, that really rocks us. I don't want that anymore. I don't want the really big things to have to happen. The broken foot, the best friend dying, the ex getting arrested in my home. Like I've already had enough fucking turmoil that I want it to be easy, and it gets to be easy. And I know that I was the one making it difficult for myself because I was so afraid of the unknown. Now I try to think of the unknown as a surprise party. And I never really loved just surprise parties. But at the beginning and end of the day now, it's like, no, like a surprise party is great. Like there's a celebration. It's exciting. Like, what can I lean into that I enjoy about surprise and the unknown? And so far, surprise and the unknown have led me to a beautiful life that I live now. So I'm willing to take the leaps.
I love that. And I do think that that's something that, you know, for many people comes from that experience of having like a few hard pushes and being like, maybe I just like ski down the hill myself this time instead of having like someone shove me.
Yeah, like I don't need to like be covered in snow and be the ball at the end. Like let's just look cute when we get there.
Yeah, it's just like first time I'm just gonna leisurely go down the blue lane. Yeah.
Hey guys, Kat's here. Just popping in to let you know that as of this podcast going live, I am now back from maternity leave and I am taking on just a few select one-on-one clients. Just like the incredible woman you're listening to right now could be you, could be your transformative story. So if you're ready to take the reins to really manifest that life that you've been dreaming of and want a mentor who's been there, done that, and loves helping women to do this themselves, then check out the link below, fill out an application, and we'll be in touch.
And I do think that that's one of the Oprah talks about that a lot with the analogy of like it comes like when our intuition speaks. It's one of my favorite things. Like that when I saw her give this talk about just kind of like when our intuition speaks, at first it's just like a light little breeze, you know, and then it becomes like a little mist of rain, and then like the rain gets a little bit heavier, but you know it's fine, just rain, and then it's a thunderstorm, and then it's hailing, and then if the hail still doesn't get you, you're going to get hit by a brick. And I think, you know, the beautiful thing is that there's no shame in like, I think we've all had bricks. We've all had things get to bricks. There's no shame in that. And sometimes you need a couple bricks to be able to be like, hey, you know, I feel the mist. Let me just do it before the rain starts, you know, let me just go for it. So one of the things I want to talk about that I think is so prevalent with you is that you're someone that has so many different talents, right? That like, you know, self-taught chef, intuitive chef, sound healer, Reiki healer, medium. And you've had these different gifts that kind of like have popped off, you know, throughout your journey, but have never like gone away, even if they weren't what you featured in your work. How do you delineate that? How has that journey been for you? Because I think sometimes what can be hard for people is to be like, well, I am really good at that thing, so shouldn't that be the thing I do? Right? And yeah, let's just go off that, because I feel like you have a lot of that. And I think that is, you know, that's something, I think that's one of the things that sometimes can keep us stuck or
For
keep
sure.
us from making the most aligned choice, because we think, okay, well, you know, I remember just for me, even in my like also like food to spirituality journey, right? Like I, similar to you, I feel like when it came to my like vegan gluten-free cupcakes, I have a heaven sent gift. And I'm like, and there was a little part of me that was like, I feel bad that I'm squandering. And I have some girlfriends to this day to this day that will not let me, like, I just had my baby blessing and so many of my girlfriends were like, please bless us with your cupcakes. and so there's like a part that you that's like, man, I know you have, you know, many of those gifts as well. How do you dance with that, and how have you made peace with like, hey, I can have this talent, I can have this gift, whether it's mediumship or, you know, your healing abilities or cooking, and I can also say, but that's not where my heart is right now aligned to serve or create a work thing with?
Yeah. So I mean, I love this question because it's so true. I have a vast array of things, and I've studied like so many things in the last 8 years, and I'm continuing to. And what I've learned is some of these things are just for me. Like, it doesn't have to be for everyone. Even right now in this Kundalini yoga teacher training, I'm not taking it to be a Kundalini yoga teacher. Will that happen? I don't know. I'm doing it because I felt guided to, for me. Meanwhile, a friend called me yesterday and she was like, do you know a Kriya that would be good for me as I'm like doing X, Y, and Z? I was like, yeah, I'll take care of you tomorrow. Don't worry. Right. But it was just an easy thing that someone could ask me for. With being a chef, when that kind of was like, that's no more, I was like, well, like, what does that mean now? And what it meant was, when I was back in corporate America and felt this inner knowing, I'm here to help people heal, I also felt this knowing that I want to be able to put dinner on the table for my family at night. I want to be able to get my kids off the bus, or whatever the bus meant, because we live in such different times than when we were kids. Barely see a school bus these days. Um, so my chefing, my food started going to cooking for friends, cooking for family, hosting dinners, just because I wanted to and it felt good. Even Reiki, I've trained over 100 people in Holy Fire Reiki over these years. And this year, I tried to fight it and that I could still teach. And I tried like, okay, but like maybe. And God was like, no, like you're done teaching. You've taught all these other people so they can now teach. So that can be their next level of their business. So let go of it to let I remind myself, as I let go, I get lighter and I ascend higher. And also I create space for someone else to ascend to their next level by simply letting go. So that's how I like to look at it. And the Reiki specifically helped me to look at it that way. um like, my ego is like, yeah, but there's a case by case basis where you may train someone, and I'm like, no, like, no, there's not. Like, calm down. Like, you already train people in every level, you can send them somewhere. So I have to like remind myself it's okay to let go. There may be a time and place in my life where I want to teach it again and it may fit in. Right now is not that moment. So I try to remind myself, like, nothing is forever. Nothing is forever. I never would have thought that I'd be in a place now where 6 months ago, I was the chef for Julianne Huff's retreat for Kinergy. I never imagined that this past February, I'd be called to New York to cook and do sound healing for a client for a month who was going through like a massive breakdown that needed support on the level of what I used to do when I worked in recovery. So all of these things get to come back when and if it's aligned for them to. And I think the more I see that, the more I let go and don't have that like bear grip on like, oh my God, but this is my thing. And like, if this isn't my thing, then who am I? Because like I was sharing in my weekly glow up call this week with the women, I am not a Reiki healer. I am not a shaman. I am not, these are parts of me, but what I am is love. I am light. I am joy. I am peace. I am a soul having this experience, and I get to try on many different roles. And when I studied with a shaman, God, so many years ago already, one of the things he said to me that really has always stuck with me is you get to decide who you want to be every day and what role you want to play on the stage of life. So if today I want to be the chef, if this week I want to be the chef, if this month I want to be the chef, cool. And if next month I'm like, I want to be the healer, cool. If the month after that I'm like, I want to be a dolphin trainer, then like find me in Key West and like I'll be trying that on, you know? So I think like the more I let go, the more I also shed the parts of me that have some ego tendencies to want to claim something. Because when we're trying to like like this is mine, I'm holding on to it so tightly. It's like I can't like it's I don't know, I never saw Lord of the Rings, but someone once compared it to like some Lord of the Rings character. Anyway, like you're just like holding on to it so tightly. Like I don't want to hold on to things. I just like I want to let go and be free. So that's definitely like what's worked for me and how it's continued to evolve. It's just like let go and let God.
Well, I think that's also just like being more in that like feminine, flowy energy
Yeah.
of receiving and being magnetic and following your intuition. And like, like in tarot, it'd be like the high priestess card, right?
Well, she
And
keeps showing up for me.
yes, yes, that's exactly that energy. And we have a world and we have a lot of constructs in this world that want it to be more linear, that want to try to put us in a box, that teach us. And even when I say like more masculine concepts, I don't mean like males and females. Like I just mean general, like there are females that are teaching masculine concepts, it goes both ways. But it's just this this prescription of, like you said, like you have to like pick one thing and you got to like nail yourself to it and you got to keep going so hard, and like that's the only way to success. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. I have a belief, and you have all agreed to disagree with me, but because I have no clue if I'm right. But my theory is that I think there are some souls that do have kind of like more of like a one-track assignment in this life and are able to kind of like click into one of those pathways and kind of like ride that train, so to speak. And it really does suit them to do that. And then I just believe that there are other souls, like our souls, that are not meant to do that. That like actually it's the opposite, like clicking into that path where some of those souls can like give them life and give them energy and like, give them momentum, and clicking into one path for our souls feels like a slow death sometimes, because we're meant to constantly like evolve and experience and taste all the flavors and go through the metamorphoses. And it's also a difference between, like you were saying, with like identity, right? And I don't like, it's not about marketing or branding, so I don't want to like bring it there, but I feel like the metaphor would be like being like that, like kind of like that personal brand or that like kind of like public figure, right? Where it's like you're following the person because of their like kind of essence and personality and like that, and you're just kind of going on the journey with them, and like whatever the flavor of the week is that week. Like maybe they're talking about the ice cream that they love, maybe they're going to the beach with their family, maybe they're organizing their closet. Like you're down for the ride because you're just signing up for the vibration and the energy and the transmission that's coming through them. And then other people kind of have that thing where like you're going to them for a specific thing. Like you're going to that guy because he's a great dentist and he knows like all the good holistic things about teeth or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But you might not care if he's having ice cream that week with his kids. What's your thoughts on that? And feel free to disagree with me, but that's
no, I totally agree. And like from a standpoint of human design, that's like the best way I can put it is there are personal profiles and there are transpersonal profiles. I'm a personal profile. I'm a 3/5. I'm a martyr heretic. And the way that I'm meant to move through and navigate life is through trial and error. And then I'm meant to teach my lessons that I've learned to other people. That's literally like what my profile says as a personal, where someone who's transpersonal is actually here in this lifetime to help personals become more personal and live out their destiny. So there are people here that are meant to live out certain destinies in this lifetime, and there are certain people that are here to simply have a more third dimensional existence, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think there's no, there's no hierarchy, but you can tell which one you are by what genuinely lights you up.
Yeah.
By what genuinely lights you up. And I think, my husband is a great example of this. He's a generator in human design, but he is someone that like, while he is very like multifaceted in his like interests personally, he's been very clear from a very young age about his profession and his livelihood and his studies. And he like he makes me feel like I have like the most extreme like ADHD of like career whatever, because he's just like, the man could not, like, in his spare time will read books about neurosurgery. He's
like
so fascinated by
like
that.
We as a society, if someone didn't have that inner knowing, like I'm here to be this type of doctor, I'm here to read neuroscience books, like I'm not here to be a doctor. If I read a neuroscience book, I'd be like, I'm gonna put it under my pillow and see if through osmosis, like I get any of the information, right? So thank God for those people. Like, thank God, because otherwise, like, I mean, if we can't all be floating out here and doing the things that we do, like, there has to be the balance of like what's happening so that the earth essentially and we as humans can all find peace and happiness and joy and ascend in this lifetime.
Yeah, and I think it's just really honoring like what your thing is. Like what your thing is and what lane you're in and what really lights you up. And probably if you're listening to this, you're probably like most likely more relatable to me and Lauren because you were attracted here. But I just wanted to give that caveat in case anyone is listening that has that kind of like other type. The journey with that other type is just keep going deeper into it, like now he's started his own like research foundation for his type of surgery or whatever and all this stuff. It's like just keep burrowing into that hole, and that's how you will get that kind of like new level of variety and stuff. But for those of us that are like sparkly little snowflakes running around, I think Elizabeth Gilbert called it hummingbird energy or something like this, where we kind of like, she talks about like that it's like a disservice to some of us to talk about, I forgot like the original, like the comparison was something like, people that just have like one, like a purpose or a passion or like, and so you spend all this time trying to find it and trying to figure out, is it? Is this it? Is this it? This it? Instead of like honoring your hummingbird energy, which is just to kind of like be you and like flutter around and like pollinate different flowers.
I love that.
So tell us about where are you at right now? Where are you at right now? What is, what is the biggest fear that you've either are moving through or have just moved through to get to where you're at? And like, what are the tools that are like prime top of the toolbox right now that you're using?
Yeah. So it's crazy because I'm so full circle right now because I'm moving through right now writing what will be my first book, and it's a healing cookbook. It's healing for your chakras. I'm being called to bring some human design elements into it, and really it's all about eating for your intuition and how to follow your intuition and have the life you truly want, and how we can bring that into the kitchen through food, how we can create that in our bodies. So it's interesting because every time I sit down to write, I get activated and a new upgrade comes into my body, and there's fear around, am I ever going to finish this book? Am I just like going in circles, or is this going to happen? And then I sit down and write more, and the same thing starts happening. So I've been moving through that at the moment, and at the same time I'm in this Kundalini yoga teacher training, as I mentioned. And oh my god, every intensive weekend we have brings up something new. And what was really beautiful is this past weekend we were in training and we talked about death as well as the chakras, the Kundalini lifestyle, and motherhood. And we did a rebirth process. So it was really a culmination of my life, I found, in this weekend. And in this weekend, I was able to move through certain things. I realized I actually never fully grieved the death of my best friend because as soon as he started communicating with me, I was like, let's go, let's get on this unicorn and let's fly. And I didn't realize that I actually like had some deep trauma that was buried inside of me that I've been working through in Kundalini. But I wasn't ready to even acknowledge it until I was ready to acknowledge it. So that's been present for me. And just the grief in general, and how some people may move through things quickly and some it may take quite a few years. And there is no right or wrong. It's simply your journey to get to have. So that's been really present. I've also been working through the idea of motherhood. I've always thought I wanted to be a mother, and last month I gave myself the space to think about, maybe I don't want to be a mother. What would life look like if I wasn't a mother? And because I was willing to have that conversation with myself as I went into the rebirthing process in our training this past weekend, I was able to see why I was afraid or wasn't sure if I want to be a mother, and why I'm 40 years old, and why at 40 it's like, why hasn't this happened for me? And I realized it's because I had some ancestral things that I needed to clear up, that I was doing the work that had been passed down to my mother, that was lovingly passed down to me. And what I realized was I came into this world a little angry because I didn't actually want to come back again. So when I came back again, there was a lot of anger because my parents didn't necessarily know how to hold space for my advanced soul as a young child. So I shut down my gifts pretty much as soon as I entered into this world. So I've been able to go to these places and actually have really beautiful conversations with my mother about them. I talked to my dad about certain things, but he didn't need to hear about the rebirthing. So that's kind of where I'm at, like personally on my own growth journey, because I think it's important to remember, I've been sharing with my clients, like, we're not healing. Like, we're already whole. We're perfect. We're getting better every day. We're getting better. And every time we're like, oh, I need to do more healing around this, like you're just continuing to program that something's wrong with you. So I'm doing a lot of mindset work with myself as well as with clients, reprogramming the mind. A few years ago, I studied NLP, hypnosis, and timeline therapy. So that's wanting to show itself, right? Like something I didn't even mention, like it's there and it wants to show itself right now. So those are my focuses. And even within my business, had so many courses. You could still find them, but I've taken them off my website. Right now, my biggest focus is I have a weekly program called the Weekly Glow Up, where I have a community right now. There's 38 women in it. We meet once a week, either at 8 p.m., where we do energy activations, whatever it looks like that day, or we meet at 12 p.m., where we do hot seat coaching. And I simply hold space for what it is that my clients need. And that's once a week. And other than that, I have limited space for one-on-one clients. I'm being really mindful with the clients that I bring in, because I know I'm here right now to be working with advanced souls that are really going through some big ascensions and need some support. So that's kind of where I'm at right now in terms of work and working on the book. And I know there are some big things coming. There's going to be retreats. There's going to be a book. There's going to be events. There's going to be traveling to different cities again. So right now I'm enjoying this, what I would call quiet time.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I know we need to wrap up, but I have like 3 little things that I still like after that I want to hit on. I'm going to tell you them all at once and then we'll break it down, because once again, I'm scared I'm going to forget. So one is, I really want to touch on if there was any resistance to the full circle coming through with food. With like your cookbook, and then being invited, by Julian Howe to do her like Kinergy retreat. Because I think that's, it's something that I know me and you have talked about privately, but I think it comes out for people, and like and they could easily be thrown off by that, right? And be like, well, I thought I closed this chapter. Like, aren't I done with this chapter? Is this like backtracking? How do I know if it's not backtracking, or it's just like, now I've come to this new place and I can do it from a different space? One. 2, I love your perspective on that, of like not feeling like you constantly need to like fix or heal yourself, right? And just that shift from like, but at the same time, right? Like, we don't need to fix or heal stuff. But at the same time, I do think one of the things that I know you do and I do, and we both recommend to people we work with, is that like, you're always on the journey. So like, enjoy the ride, and don't be like, I don't know if you ever had this with your clients, but sometimes with some of my clients, never Lauren, but some of my clients will be like, can I just be done? Like, is it done yet? I'm exhausted. Like, is there have to be another lesson? Is there like another thing? And I think, I'm curious about how you've helped. For me, I have gamified it. That is how I have my solution to it. But I'm curious about your solution. And then the last thing I just want to ask about is kind of like, what are these, what are the things that you're feeling, that you're loving working through with your current clients right now, the people that you are feeling that are really aligned?
Yeah.
So
okay. I'm like, am I gonna remember all those? So the first question, when my grandmother came through and was like, you need to stop seeing clients and you need to write a healing cookbook, I was like, no one knows I'm a chef though. Like, I haven't, like, I talk about it in my stories. I'll post cooking in my stories, but like, my feed, right? So like, ego was like, but no one knows you're a chef. So I got over that and started writing. And then I got to a point in the book where I had written like 30,000 words and was like, I don't understand the purpose of this. If no one knows I'm a chef, like, how does this make sense? And at that point, I was guided to stop writing. And that's when the retreat came up like a few months later. And it was like, Lauren, you are still a chef. Can you believe that? Can you trust it? So of course I took the opportunity. And I remember I flew out to, the retreat was in Sedona. So I flew out like an extra day early, because I was like, I don't know, like, if I can like grasp all of this. Like, I need to get on the land to ground this energy. And the food was amazing. Everyone was so happy. I had incredible testimonials. it was epic. Like, I know how good I am at it. And there was a lot of fear. Like, it was like a 20, like the first night was like 30 people for dinner and it was just me cooking. I was like, do I remember how to do this? Like, of course I do. Like, of course I do. It's already in my cells and DNA. And I had to trust, like, it's already inside of you. It's just putting that chef hat back on, just as you've been wearing the healer hat. Take that one off for a minute, put the chef hat on. Though the healer one stays also there. It's like all there. So yeah, there was a good amount of fear. It feels as though that's burnt off. And like, I feel like if people don't get it, they don't get it. Cause it's not about anyone else so much as it's about me. Like, I'm writing this book for me. And in writing this book to heal me first, I know the energetic codes that people are going to receive by simply holding it, maybe opening it once, or maybe reading it cover to cover and using every recipe. Like, I know you're going to get the energetic activation, and that's both like the energy healer and coach meeting the chef. And it's like, of course, like, they're all meant to go together. Because even as I've worked, I always explain things like, we have a lot of things on the stove, and sometimes things will be in the front and some pots will be in the back, and you put your magic sauce in there and they simmer on the back burner and then they come to the front. I think you've talked about this too.
Yep.
Just,
I love this
like,
analogy.
I'm just like playing on the stove.
Yeah.
So I was nervous, and then the nerves burned off. And I think that's one of the greatest things. It's like, the nerves come up. So, like, if it's fear and it's scary and you're in danger, you're going to know that, versus, I'm nervous, I'm scared, can I do this? That's a fear that's bubbling up to simply be burned off. So when I have those things come up, I'm like, let me burn this off as quickly as I can, and let me show up for the things I know I'm meant to show up for. So that's question number one.
Yeah. And I realized, like, number two wasn't like a super question. It was mostly me, I think, iterating that, like, you know, I appreciate the reframe on that of, like, not making it a thing, not you know, it's funny, actually, this reminds me of, like, I got this, like, weird, and are you okay on time? I know we're going a little over right now.
I'm good.
Okay. It's 1:11 here though. I got this random tapping comment because when I do my YouTube videos for tapping, and it just shows you how different language and different words like resonate differently with different people, right? Like, in my YouTube videos for tapping, I always claim that the reason that something hasn't manifested is because I've been blocking it, right? And I love that. Like, I love that because that makes me feel like a total badass. Like, I am so powerful that, like, the only reason that thing wouldn't be in my life is because I've just, for whatever reason, for whatever, like, protective story I've had, decided that I'm not having it yet, right? And, you know, a very understandable person commented and was like, I love your videos, but I, like, hate that you always start with this, like, I'm blocking it, because I feel like it makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong, right? And, like, I don't want to feel like I'm doing something wrong or whatever. She said it more eloquently than I'm doing it, but that was the essence of it. And so I just think it's really interesting in that context, right? And I told her, I was like, well, if that makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, then change the wording on it. Like, figure out what you want to say. I'm like, for me, the only reason I say that is because for me, that's like a reclamation of all my power, right? Like, I'm taking all of my power back from, like, anything I've blamed, everything that I've given it to, any areas where, like, and that probably comes just from my own work, right? Of, like, knowing that, like, one of, like, my shadow is victimhood, right? So if I own it, you have no power over me.
Yeah.
And I love it. Like, I get off on being like, well, the only reason I don't have it is me. And it empowers me. But it's also interesting, like you were saying on the healing journey, that how we interact with our journey can either empower or disempower us, either make us feel like we are divine beings on a spiritual evolutionary roller coaster ride, or we're these like broken things that have to constantly be like gluing ourselves together and trying to figure it out, you know?
Yeah, totally. And I think, you said before you have clients that will be like, am I done yet? And I definitely have been there. Like, am I done with this fucking lesson yet? And I think it's that reminder, like you're saying, like we get to decide when we're done with the lesson. And there's also space that we can pause. Like you don't have to like I'm gonna keep going through the lessons. That's how I do it. I'm just like, let's go, let's keep it moving. And like sometimes I'll be like, okay, maybe like a week that we just like don't have to learn anything else. So we just like integrate. Like a friend asked me to go this weekend to a breathwork thing. I was like, I love you and no. Like I just went through Kundalini activation process, Kundalini training. Like I'm good right now. I'm all set because I just need a pause. I just want to go to the beach this weekend and sit on the sand and swim in the ocean because that's what feels good to me right now. So I think it is like important to remember like we decide how quickly or how slowly we want to move through something, and we can also decide to pause for a moment, and like that's okay. There's nothing wrong with taking a moment to pause.
Absolutely. And so lastly, what are the clients and the things that you're loving, helping people with right now? What's lighting you up the most?
Right now, I feel like so many of my clients are also in rebirth phases in their lives, in a space of I've been doing this, but I really want to do this. And how do I get from doing this to taking the leap to doing that? So I guess I'm in that space again of clients ready to take leaps. And I'm like, let's go. Like, I got you. I'm gonna hold this net for you with the universe, and we're gonna help you get to the place that you want to be. And for different people, it's different things. Also, what's starting to come in, as I mentioned, right? Someone reached out to me for Kundalini. Um, but what I'm feeling is it's very much a mix of Kundalini and the kitchen, actually, and helping people from a perspective of health coaching and understanding eating for your intuition, and it not only being about the food you eat, but also your relationships and how you're digesting life. So I'm really helping people to understand those components too. And I'd say that's like starting to like light up very big on my grid. I had someone reach out yesterday to ask if they could do a nutrition consult with me. I don't even have that listed anywhere. And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. Um, so I do feel that that's the gradual next phase for me where I'm bringing together all of the tools, the emotional, the spiritual, the physical, the mental, to have this holistic approach. And way back when I became a holistic health coach, I was afraid of actually coaching. I didn't have access to my voice. I didn't have access to my power. And now that I'm fully sitting in my power, now that I fully have access to my voice, I'm like, fuck yeah, let's be a health coach.
I love it. It's full circle, right?
Full
To like
circle.
go to the place you started and like know it unlike you've ever known it before. It's
Absolutely.
so beautiful.
And getting to like bring in the new tools with it, because right, and you do this so well too. Like we'll be coaching and then it's like, okay, butterfly technique, and how do you bridge all of these worlds together? And that's what feels the best to me. So
Yeah,
however
that's how I
someone
feel. That's
shows
why I've
up.
always been like a fan of like the kind of like toolbox, right? Or like ingredients, whatever you want to call for the recipe, right? It's always like I think all of these things um as a coach, just like in general, right? When you have these different modalities that you never know when it's going to come out. Like, I've also like, I did my Kundalini teacher training a while ago, I think when I first moved to LA. And so it's like I've done so many different meditation things that it's just based on that person in front of you. We were like, oh, let me whip this out of my bag, right? And I'm always delightfully surprised every once in a while. I'll be like, write up a client's meal plan. And I'm like, that's crazy, right? But like, hey, I love that. And I really believe that like we were divinely resourced in all these different modalities, so that when someone's soul is just like attracted to us, right? Like if you've listened to this podcast and you're like, I don't know, but I'm just like interested in learning more about Lauren and I feel like connected to Lauren, it's like you just go with that. Like just go with that, because like sometimes you don't even know. Like I feel like a lot of times, I'm sure your clients, my clients, are like surprised by the things we can pull out of our magic bag. Right?
Yeah. Oh,
And be like, okay, we're gonna do this different thing right now, go with me.
my mom actually joined my glow up community this year because she's in a space in her life. I won't say her age, but she has a milestone birthday this year. And she is just feeling like there's more. And I don't necessarily understand it, but there's more. So she joined my glow up community. And it was one of the first calls. And she called me after and she said, I don't know how you do it. And I said, do what? Like, I don't understand. She said, you just, like how to talk to people and the words they need to hear. And then like these different things that I don't even know what these things are that you're doing, but you're doing these things and it works. And then people cry and people laugh and they're happy and and everyone's having this experience. And I don't know how you do it. And I'm just amazed you're my daughter. And it was such a beautiful thing. And what I know to be true is like, I know it works because my mother just signed up to go to Greece with me in September, leading up to her birthday for 10 days for a breathwork retreat.
Oh my God.
So it's, we never know how we also sometimes don't even know how our words affect people. And they do. And, just that reminder, like to your audience, like your words matter. So if you're feeling like, oh, but like who wants to hear me? There's at least one person that does and that needs to hear you. So just speak to that one person. If you're uncomfortable speaking to more than one person, like speak with that one person in mind who really is probably a former version of you.
Absolutely. And that echoes kind of what you said earlier too, that I think is such an important reminder too, is that, you're talking about with the book, right? By like honoring the thing that you need to write for you, honoring the thing that like you need to share for you or you're interested in right now or whatever is going on, you like that inclination exists because it's going to help someone. And you don't need to like figure out how it's going to help someone yet, but by you trusting that and you putting it out there, and I mean, just full circle it as we close is like, that's, I mean, how both of our like blog journeys started without any audiences, right? Without knowing if they would ever have an audience.
I know, like my dad was the only one commenting.
I didn't think anyone read my blog. I thought it was purely therapeutic. I was shooketh when people emailed me. I was like, oh my God, how did you find it? But it's like when we start things from that pure intention, which I think sometimes now is like counterculture these days, being able to just be like, I'm just doing this because I need to share this. That's when the magic really like happens. And we can trust that like we're being guided and we're being used of service, even if we haven't like figured out how, right? If we're just following that thing. Oh, Lauren, it's always a delight to talk to you. How can people find out more if they want to join your glow up community or they just want to follow you or they want to contact you or stalk you? How can they find you?
My website is laurencourtneyheals.com and all of my socials are I am Lauren Courtney. And you can DM me, message me, let me know how you enjoyed this episode and this journey. I'm so grateful to sit down and talk to you like a decade later, as you're sitting here entering this new chapter of your life, like birthing a child into this world. And it's just such a beautiful moment. And I'm so, so grateful. So thank you.
Yay.
And thank you for holding space for me over all of these years and being a fellow unicorn who I could look to, because again, like there was no social media. Like I happened to find you in the back of a classroom and I'm so lucky that I was guided and that I followed my intuition and listened. So thank you for always being a way shower for people like us.
Oh, I love you. And it's been such a delight. And it's been just such a wonder being able to, watch you through all these beautiful transitions and watch you blossom and flourish. And I look forward to seeing even more from you. And so I'm excited I get to share you with all my peeps. And I'll have, for all of you guys listening, I'm going to have all of Lauren's links below so that you can go find her, and you'll love her. Obviously, you probably already love her by this point. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us here on Divine Downloads, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Divine Downloads. As always, be sure to check the links below for all sorts of goodies from our featured guests, as well as from yours truly. We have our Divinely Design Your Life meditation bundle that you can access for free, as well as our Conscious Lifestyle Design Assessment for free at the links below. So go grab all of the goodies. And if you'd like to show us a little bit of love, feel free to give us 5 stars and a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, or subscribe on YouTube and leave us a little comment with what you loved about this episode. As always, we love your help in sharing the podcast far and wide. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of our community.